Hey, what's up guys? This is Spencer from Pixel and Bracket. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do long shadows like in flat design. In fact, maybe I'll put up a couple examples right here that you might have seen out there where they use these types of long shadows. Now I've got two ways of doing this. The first one is the one that I prefer at this point. The second one is one I've taught before using the blend tool, but you're going to find out that there's some downfalls to it, and I really don't like using that method anymore. So let's get into it. I've got this lamp design here that I actually created a tutorial for called Flat Design Lamp, I'm pretty sure. But I'll link to it, or there's a card popping up right now that you guys can go look at to actually build this lamp. But we're just looking at this object itself. It doesn't really matter what it is, and we're gonna add a long shadow to it. So the first method I'm gonna do involves the pen tool. I'm just gonna move this lamp over here a little bit. And one thing I want to get out right away is if I have any shape out here, just a couple, let's give it a different fill, maybe just like, well, kind of a shadowy color will be fine. So any kind of shape out here is made up of anchor points. You can see them, for instance, the square that's got an anchor point on each corner. The pen tool, if I have this object selected and hit P, the shortcut key P for the pen tool, it's right up here. It can add or subtract anchor points from shapes. Okay, so I can add an anchor point here, or I can subtract this anchor point. The direct selection tool, the shortcut key is A, can directly select anchor points, and then I can move them around. Or, what's even more important is I could click and drag to select two, and then click on the path in between those two anchor points to move that path around. Okay, I just want you to understand that because we're going to be using that in this method. So let's go ahead and get rid of this shape. All right, so I'm going to create a long shadow. No matter what my object is, I'm going to look at it and decide where I want my shadow to come from. I think I want it to start up here at this point and maybe down here at this point, and then kind of go out at a 45-degree angle. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on my entire object. This is just one object. You could group it together. And I'm going to hit Command or Control 2, and that's going to lock it, which means I can't move it anymore. I can't even select it. However, as long as I have Smart Guides selected up in the View drop-down down to Smart Guides, I can still see all the little paths and anchor points, which means when I select my pen tool, which I'm going to do now, shortcut key P, I can start right here on this anchor point just by hovering over the top of it. Once I've started there, we're creating a shape, and we need to create a full, complete shape. I'm going to hold Shift to go down at a 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to create another point down here. From there, I'm going to go back to my selection tool, click off of that path that we created, and then go back to the pen tool. Go back to this first point, and you're going to see a slash or diagonal line underneath my pen tool. If I click on that path, that means we're continuing that path now from that point. So now I'm going to go this way with it instead of from the point down here that we were at. So this time I want to just create this path so it's inside of the shape. So I'm going to go to the middle half here, and I'm going to bring it down to here, the bottom. And I'm going to bring it over to here, which this is where I really wanted to get. And from there, I'm going to hold Shift and come down here and just try to pick something that's sort of parallel with the other point here. So I'm going to pick something right in here. It really doesn't matter how the end of this shape is, how perfectly 45 this one is. It's more important to have 45 this and this are. And then I'm just going to complete this by clicking on that last anchor point. There's a circle shape. That means we're closing up the path. So now we have an actual shape. And I'm going to send this behind my lamp by right-clicking, going down to Arrange, and Send to Back. Now it might go behind also your background, just depending on how many different layers you have, but just get it behind your object. And so there we go. We have a shadow. It's really bad right now, but we have one. So what people like to do generally is make this a lot lighter, first off. So you can do that either by changing the fill to a lighter color, or changing the opacity, which will help bring in some of that background color to something like 20%. And once we're there, maybe we want the fill to be a little bit darker. So you see that shadow brings in some of that background. And then, like I said before, with that direct selection tool, we can grab those bottom 2 points, and this is where you can change the angle of your shadow, or you can just stretch it out and hold shift to keep it at that 45-degree angle. So whatever your container is, maybe you've done like a circle container, or maybe you have this rectangle, you can pull it outside of that and then clip it at that point. So that's one way to do that. The other way you can add in color here is to create a gradient, which I know a lot of people do. And so we can just select this shape right here. We can go find our gradient tab, which you can go up to Window down to Gradient to find it. It's Command or Control F9. And once we have that pulled out, this is probably a black to white or white to black gradient for you. So I'm going to click on it, and we're going to go back to that. So it probably looks like the default gradient setup, which is going to be like this with 100% opacity. Something like that. And if you already have your opacity on that shape set, it's going to look a little bit like this, but let's say we don't. It's at 100%. If you went and created the gradient right away, it would look like this. It'd go white to black, it'd be vertical, and it would be 100%. So what we really want is to go black to black, essentially. So I'm just going to click this black color. And this second black, we want its opacity to be 0. And then this gradient slider here, we can move around to adjust how quickly it goes to that second color. And then the other thing that we need to do is adjust the angle, right? We need to kind of follow this angle down, because right now the gradient goes from straight left to right. That's a little bit easier to see, not in this box with this angle, but if we select our shape, go over here and select the gradient tool, the shortcut key is G, we can see actually where the gradient is drawn. And we can redraw it. So where I start and where I end, by clicking and dragging, and I can hold shift to make it 45 degrees, where I start and where I end is from left to right on this gradient. And so you see we can drag this gradient back, we can bring this back a little bit if we want to, and we can adjust that gradient to be however we want it to be. The other thing you can do is you can still adjust this shape by going to that direct selection tool, shortcut key A, selecting these bottom 2 points, and we can bring this guy back up. And if we hold shift, it'll keep that 45-degree angle. And now one thing to note here is obviously this is really, really dark. So we could take this entire shape and we can go from, well, we can just change the opacity on the entire thing to something like 20%. So now you have a much lighter colored shadow disappearing into the background, just like that. That is my preferred method. I hope you guys were able to follow along there. There's a couple different things we went through, but there's a lot of adjustments that you can make with this guy to sort of create it however you want. Oh yeah, this is still locked. So to unlock, we can do Command Option 2 or Control Alt 2 to unlock. To lock and unlock. You can also go up to Object, down to Lock or Unlock. That's the other way that you can lock and unlock if you don't have those shortcut keys down. And so we can take this little group up here. Now the cool part about this shadow is, let's say you didn't want it to start at the edge of this, you wanted to move it to here. You can always take these 2 points and move this guy over so it connects right there. And so now your shadow starts sort of where the shadow begins on the lamp itself. You can make micro adjustments to it, which I think is pretty unique. All right, now the second way, I don't even want to show you this way, but most people probably still aren't watching anyway because this tutorial is getting long, is with the blend tool. So I'm going to duplicate this lamp out. We're going to create another shadow right here. And what you have to do with the blend tool is you need a solid shadow shape. So I'm going to duplicate with Option or Alt to get me a second shape of whatever you have created. Now this lamp needs to be a single color. So I need to go up to Window, down to Pathfinder. I need to merge everything together because it's made up of different shapes. So I'm just going to hit that Shape Mode Unite. And now we have a single shape. It could be any color, just make it like a gray color if you want it to be. The opacity, I'm gonna go back to 100% opacity on that. So mine's just a black shadow right now. I can drag this back over top of our original lamp. I can hold Option or Alt and duplicate down at a 45-degree angle by holding Shift while I'm doing this. Now I have two lamps. We want to create a blend between these two lamps. So I'm going to select both, go up to Object, down to Blend Options. Now I want to select Specified Distance on the spacing and 1 pixel. That's as close as I can get each step to be. So I'm going to hit OK on that. The orientation, just leave it as default. Okay, nothing happens because we didn't make the blend, we just adjusted blend options. So we go back up to Object, down to Blend Options. Oh, I'm sorry. Go back up to Object, down to Blend, Make. Now we just have this smear, right, between these two objects. But this blend here is its own little piece, right? It's like its own group. So I can double click into the blend, and now I can select each lamp individually. If I select this bottom one and I take its opacity down to 0, it's going to blend from 100% opacity down to 0% opacity. Now I can double click out of that group. This is looking weird, but just hang on. The other thing I can do is click on this entire blend and change its opacity maybe down to that 20% we had on the other lamp. Just like that. And now, once again, I need to right-click, arrange, and send backwards. We need to bring it behind the lamp itself. So there's that shadow. And then the cool thing about blends is I can double-click on this and just grab this lamp and move him around. And that blend is going to just adjust to the end of the lamp. But here's a little something. So look at the difference in these two shadows. First off, this one takes the entire lamp shape and just smears it down to the other lamp shape. So you get this line here, you get some different things happening, and then you can tell that the blend ends in the shape of the lamp. So like, look at where that shadow ends. It's hard for me to put my arrow over it without you seeing that outline, but that shadow ends sort of in that shape. It doesn't end so nicely like this one. So what we could do is we could back this whole thing up. We could take this lampshade and just create a rectangle with the shape tool, shortcut key M, and we could select both of these, use the shape builder tool, Shift M, and hold Option or Alt to delete the left side of the lamp. So basically we get the right half of the lamp, the right half shadow. And we could do the same steps here, just by duplicating that out, making the blend here. Because we have the same blend options, we can just make it. And we can go in here, do 0. And so what this is going to do is create a little bit different of a shadow. I would say it's a little bit nicer just having the right side of the shape being in the shadow. However, you still get some sort of weird ending to this. There's a little bit extra shadowiness in here. There's some stuff going on, and I guess we're in the middle of it down here instead of over here to the side, which you would have to, you'd have to also include this whole piece down here as well. So there's just some funky things to creating shadows with the blend that I don't like as much anymore. I really like just creating a shape and then adjusting the gradient as needed. I don't know, that was a lot. That was a lot longer than I wanted it to be. I hope you got a little bit of information out of this, for sure. I like the first method better. I taught you the second one because I've taught it before, but I don't teach it that way anymore. I also taught it because other YouTube tutorial creators have taught that blend method as well. That's where I learned it, but I just don't like it anymore. It also creates a pretty choppy blend. So, I've had a lot of people kind of complain on some of those because their blend looks really choppy. And when you export it, it's still, it's still there a little bit, but it's better. But still, I like just creating the shape, creating a gradient. I feel like there's a lot more control there. Learning how to adjust the anchor points with the direct selection tool and to add and subtract anchor points if you need to with the pen tool. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Subscribe to this tutorial for more tips tricks, tutorials, cool videos, more of me. Hit that notification bell if you really, really, really want to be notified. And I'll see you guys next time.